So even before conception, we were very clear we were having kids. And I knew that I needed a girl first to kind of ease me into it, because I have a pretty good idea of what kind of father I would be. So I needed a girl to kind of, slow me down and warm and soften me up, if you will. So for me, raising my daughter, I came into fatherhood already with a certain maturity and certain understanding of male-female dynamics. And with a girl, all of that starts with the father. So I've always, since I literally pulled her out of my wife.
The world froze when the news broke. Malcolm-Jamal Warner, the legendary actor, poet, and cultural icon, was gone. On July 20th, 2025, a drowning off the coast of Costa Rica claimed his life, leaving fans around the globe in shock. Whether people knew him personally or had grown up watching Theo Huxtable on their screens, his sudden death felt like a punch to the gut. Social media erupted with heartbreak and memories. Co-stars shared raw grief, while fans poured out stories of growing up alongside him, watching him evolve from sitcom fame into a fearless voice in art and culture. It seemed like everyone had something to say about Malcolm, everyone except one person, his wife. To the world, she was almost invisible. Malcolm never revealed her name, never appeared with her on red carpets, never allowed the public spotlight to touch their love. Their life together existed intentionally in the shadows. They built a private world, far from flashing cameras, raising a child and nurturing a sacred kind of quiet love. But after his sudden passing, she said nothing. No posts, no interviews, no statements, just silence until now. For the first time since Malcolm-Jamal Warner's death, his wife has spoken, not for fame, not for headlines, but because, in her words, the silence started to hurt more than the truth. What she shared wasn't just about that day on the beach. It was raw, unfiltered, and deeply personal. She spoke about the life they built, the weight Malcolm carried, the fears he held, and the secrets he never shared with the world. Her voice trembled. At times, she paused for long stretches, as if lost in a storm of memories, searching for a way back. But when she spoke, her words revealed more than grief. They revealed love, sacrifice, and the real Malcolm-Jamal Warner, the man behind the fame. The world thought it knew him, but she knew the version no one else ever saw. This is her truth, their story, and for the first time, we're seeing a side of Malcolm-Jamal Warner that was never on display until now. Their first meeting wasn't a Hollywood fairy tale. No flashing lights, no screaming fans, just a small bookstore in Silver Lake, Los Angeles, tucked between a sleepy coffee shop and an old-school record store. Malcolm stood in the poetry aisle, thumbing through a worn copy of Langston Hughes. She was searching for something by Audre Lorde. Their eyes met across the bookshelf. She recognized him instantly. Who wouldn't? He had been America's big brother, the one with the smooth smile, the contagious laugh, the calming presence that made growing up feel a little less awkward when he was on screen. But this wasn't that Malcolm. This was a man in a faded hoodie, glasses slightly crooked, holding a paperback like it was treasure. He didn't even notice her until she dropped her book. It hit the floor with a thud, as if the world itself demanded their attention. Langston or Lord? He asked, raising an eyebrow, a slight grin tugging at his lips. She laughed, completely caught off guard. I didn't say that. She told him. That was the first spark, soft, fleeting, like a whisper at the back of the mind. In that tiny moment, something took root. A connection was born, though neither of them realized it yet. After that, their meetings weren't accidents anymore. First it was coffee, then walks around Echo Park Lake. Malcolm spoke slowly, with intention. There was a calm about him, but also a quiet heaviness, like he carried things he rarely let out. She quickly learned he had little interest in the celebrity scene. He didn't want to talk about Emmys or red carpets. He wanted to dive into music, Black literature, healing, spirituality, the things that mattered to his soul. And when she spoke, he truly listened, not the surface level nodding kind, but with full presence. That alone felt like gold. Their love didn't need the world's approval. No flashy Instagram posts, no public hand-holding. He asked for privacy, not because he was hiding her, but because he cherished her. One evening, sitting hand in hand. In the dim light of his home studio, he told her, "This is the one part of my life the world doesn't get to touch." She understood. She respected it. For years, they stayed off the radar. A few close friends knew, some family, but to the public, she didn't exist. Interviewers would pry asking about love, marriage, kids. Malcolm would just smile, keep it vague, and shift the subject. Some things aren't meant to be put on display. He'd tell her afterward, some things lose their magic when you explain them, so they never did. Their love remained quiet, wrapped in shadow, silence, and sanctuary. To the outside world, Malcolm-Jamal Warner was cool, confident, well-spoken, a man who had survived the chaos of childhood fame and come out wiser. But behind the curtain, she saw something else, something even more beautiful and sometimes more fragile. At home, he was soft-spoken, thoughtful, and a little worn down. The industry had drained him in ways most people could never understand. He rarely spoke about the darkness, but every so often, late at night, pieces of it surfaced. He talked about betrayal, about being boxed in by roles, about how people wanted the TV version of him, not the real man. "There were times I wanted to disappear," he whispered once, lying beside her, his eyes fixed on the ceiling as if it held answers. She never pushed him, she just listened. His home was his sanctuary, filled with the smell of incense, the hum of smooth jazz, shelves of poetry, stacks of books, and his beloved guitars. No trophies, no posters, nothing screaming celebrity, just art, just soul. He was always writing notes on napkins, scribbles on scraps of paper, entire notebooks scattered everywhere. Many of his most powerful words never saw the light of day. His greatest fear was being forgotten, not in headlines, but in meaning. "I want my daughter to know who I really was," he'd say, "not just who people thought I was." Malcolm was deeply spiritual. Every night, he sat in silence, meditating. After hard days, he lit sage, letting the smoke cleanse the air. He believed in energy, in ancestors watching over him, in the truth that we are all part of something bigger. That belief shaped the way he loved, with patience, presence, and care. She saw him battle his demons quietly. Some days, he shut the world out, retreating into his studio with headphones on, and his heart wide open. Music was his refuge, his way of processing what he couldn't put into words. But don't mistake him for all shadow. There was so much light, too. He loved to cook, dancing around the kitchen like nobody was watching. He cried during movies. He'd text her poems out of the blue, and every night, he sang lullabies to their daughter even long after she was too old for them. To her, he wasn't a celebrity. He was simply Malcolm, a mix of strength and fragility, confidence and doubt. A brilliant man still learning to live fully despite his scars. And she loved every part of him for it. Their daughter arrived on a rainy February morning. Malcolm held her as if she were made of glass, so delicate, so radiant. At first, he didn't say a word, just stared, lips trembling, eyes wet with emotion. Later, she joked it was the only time he had ever been speechless. But the truth was, he was overwhelmed by the beauty, the weight of fatherhood, and the chance to break cycles and write a new story. "I didn't know love could feel like this," he whispered. And in that moment, they made a decision. No press releases, no glossy magazine spreads with baby pictures, no talk show name reveals. None of that. Just them, their little world. And she never felt hidden. She felt protected. Malcolm had been burned by the spotlight before, relationships torn apart by tabloids, lies spreading online like wildfire. This time, he wasn't playing that game. He wanted his daughter to grow up free of flashing cameras and strangers speculating about her life. He wanted her to have peace, and he was willing to fight for it. They raised her quietly, away from the noise. No headlines, no stage lights, just real life. She went to school like any other kid. They played in parks, browsed local bookstores, strolled through farmers markets. If someone recognized Malcolm, he'd smile politely, say thank you, then gently guide his daughter away. To her, he was just dad. She didn't really understand who he was until the day she typed his name into Google. "What's the Cosby Show?" she asked one afternoon, giggling as she held up an old DVD box set. He laughed, too. "Just something I did a long time ago," he said with a shrug. But she started noticing more the way people looked at him, That strange mix of awe and nostalgia. The way strangers called him by a name that wasn't even his own. Through it all, he stayed grounded. He read to her every night, taught her guitar chords, and made up ridiculous songs just to make her laugh. Whenever he traveled, he brought home books instead of toys, and when she got sick, he was the one by her bedside all night long. She told the police everything else, the timeline, the wave, the CPR, the panic. But she never mentioned that look. She didn't understand it herself at first. It was just pain sharp, confusing. Only later did it begin to feel like something more. And there's one more thing she never shared. Not with police, not with anyone. The night before he died, Malcolm couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., she woke to find him outside, sitting beneath the moonlight with a journal in his lap. When she asked what he was doing, he looked up, smiled softly, and said, "Writing down the things I haven't said yet." He never told her what was in that journal, and after the accident, it was gone. Not in his bag, not in the villa, not with his clothes, vanished. Maybe he left it behind on the sand. Maybe the ocean swallowed it, or maybe he wanted it gone. She can't stop thinking about it, because maybe, just maybe, he knew. Maybe he was trying to say goodbye without saying goodbye. A quiet farewell, hidden in his calm, poetic way. She has never spoken this part out loud, but deep down, the thought lingers. Did he know he wasn't coming back? That morning on the beach, he'd said something soft, nothing dramatic, no speech. Just in that subtle, soulful way he had a blending truth into poetry. They stood together watching their daughter laugh and chase the waves. He reached for her hand, gave it a gentle squeeze, and said, "If anything ever happens to me, tell her who I really was." She laughed it off. "Don't say that," she told him. "Nothing's going to happen to you." He nodded, but kept his eyes on the ocean. "I know, just, if it ever does, don't let them turn me into something I wasn't. Not for legacy, not for image, just tell the truth." At the time, she thought he meant it metaphorically, maybe about his career, maybe his childhood. He had always struggled with how the world saw him, either frozen in nostalgia or trapped in roles shaped by public expectations. Very few people ever got to see the whole man, but now, those words won't stop echoing in her mind. "If anything ever happens to me, tell her who I really was." He never said goodbye, never even said "I love you." He didn't have to. She already knew. What he gave her instead was a mission, a quiet, heavy request. In that moment, she hadn't fully understood, but standing over his lifeless body on the sand, clutching their daughter as responders packed up their gear, it all became clear. He wanted her to speak for him, for the Malcolm-Jamal Warner the world never met. There were pieces of him he never shared, not in interviews, not on red carpets, not even with people who had known him for decades. But she knew. She saw it in the little things, the quiet pauses at dinner, the far-off look in his eyes while strumming his guitar. His hands would keep moving, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. There were nights he'd lie beside her, eyes locked on the ceiling, holding back something heavy, not sadness the way people imagine. He still laughed. He still loved deeply. He still functioned. But beneath it all was a constant ache, something that never quite settled, something unfinished. It wasn't drama. It wasn't self-pity. It was just real. A weight he carried no matter how much light he brought into the room. And now she realizes he needed someone to carry that truth for him. Not a polished legacy, not a perfect story, just the truth. He used to say he felt like the different people. There was the Malcolm everyone remembered, Theo, the witty, cheerful kid with a bright future. And then there was the man he had become, more complex, heavier, deeply aware of how fragile life really is. "There's this version of me people want," he once told her, "and then there's who I really am. I'm not sure they like the real version as much." That weight, he carried it for decades. Being seen but never fully understood, being praised but not always respected. He fought hard for roles that showed his depth, characters that broke him out of the 80s sitcom box. A few came his way, but many didn't, and beneath that professional frustration, there was something deeper, something quieter. He never spoke of it publicly, but in the year leading up to his death, something had shifted. He was dealing with chest tightness off and on. He brushed it off as stress, exhaustion, or just getting older. He didn't want doctors, didn't want tests, no fuss, no headlines. She begged him to see someone again and again. He promised. then changed the subject, whether it was pride, fear, or simply not wanting to appear vulnerable. Even to those closest to him, he stayed quiet. He kept smiling, told her he felt fine, hid the pain, and pushed through it. After he passed, she asked the Costa Rican authorities about the autopsy. The official cause, asphyxiation by submersion drowning. But the doctors also noted something else, an irregular heart rhythm. It wasn't conclusive, nothing solid enough to name it as the cause, but it was there, a quiet detail that made her wonder. Maybe it wasn't just the ocean, maybe something inside him had already started to give out, and he simply never said a word. She couldn't stop asking herself, did something happen before the wave? Did his body give out before the ocean ever touched him? She would never really know. But what she did know, what she had always known, was that he was carrying more than he ever let on. Secrets, quiet ones, heavy ones, and now she was the only one left to tell the truth. Once his body was flown back home, everything unraveled into chaos. Non-stop phone calls, reporters circling, producers asking for sound bites, old co-stars reaching out for tribute quotes, friends dropping off, flowers telling stories, spilling their grief. It all blurred into static dot for 10 straight days. She didn't hear any of it. She didn't leave their bedroom. She just curled up under the covers, wrapped in one of his sweatshirts, clinging to his scent before it faded. Their daughter stayed, with family away from the noise, away from the cameras already lined up outside their gate, trying to turn heartbreak into a headline. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. Grief sat heavy on her chest. Not dramatic, not loud, just crushing. She spent hours watching old videos of him on her phone, clips of him laughing through interviews, reciting spoken word, rocking their baby girl to sleep. None of it felt real. It was like watching a ghost she hadn't realized was already gone. And still, people expected her to speak, to step forward, to give the world its closure. They thought she'd release a polished statement or appear on a talk show with perfect makeup and rehearsed answers. But she wasn't ready for any of that, not even close. And the truth was, she didn't know the world anything. Malcolm hated the circus. He had spent his whole life protecting peace, not performing for an audience, so she disappeared. No interviews, no tribute specials, no media statements. She shut everything down, turned off her phone, locked the gate, and sank into silence. Malcolm loved deeply, and what she mourned wasn't the version of him the world lost. It was hers. The man who scribbled love notes on sticky pads and left them on the bathroom mirror. The man who did wild character voices for every bedtime story just to make their daughter laugh. The man who treated making scrambled eggs like a sacred ritual. The world cried over a legend, but she was grieving her entire life. The moment it happened caught her off guard. It was late. Around 3 a.m. the house was dark. Her daughter had finally fallen asleep, curled up in the middle of the bed they once shared. The silence was heavy, familiar. Her grief had dulled into something cold and numb, like a scar she'd stopped noticing. She hadn't meant to open it. She was just reaching for a phone charger in the nightstand when her fingers brushed the edge of a wooden box. Malcolm's box, the one he always kept there. He used to joke about it, called it his vault, said it held all his deepest thoughts. She had never opened it, not once. But that night, something told her to lift the lid. Inside was chaos, his kind of chaos. Folded notes, torn scraps, scribbled lyrics, pieces of journals ripped out and rewritten. Some messy, some poetic, some like secrets whispered to paper in the middle of the night. And in the center of it all was a letter. The envelope was simple, just 3 words written on it. For you. Her breath caught, hands shaking. She unfolded the letter slowly. The ink was smudged, like he'd written it fast, maybe even through tears. And the words hit her like a wave. I don't know when you'll read this, maybe soon, maybe never, maybe something happens and I'm gone. But I needed to say it somewhere, just in case I never get the chance. You are the only truth I've ever known. You gave me peace when I was tired of pretending. You gave me a family when I'd forgotten how to belong. You gave me space to be imperfect and still be enough. If I go before you, don't protect me with silence. Tell the world who I really was. Even the parts that weren't pretty, even the ones I tried to hide. Because if I'm remembered at all, I want it to be real. And today, she breaks the silence, not just for him, but for anyone who's ever felt overlooked, misunderstood, or forced to hide pieces of themselves just to survive. This is for the ones carrying invisible weight, for those caught between what the world expects and who they truly are. If this story touched you, if you felt something real while hearing it, don't just scroll past. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. We want to hear from you. What does Malcolm's story mean to you? And hey, share this with someone who needs to hear the truth behind the fame. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another powerful untold story. Thank you for watching and for helping us honor the real Malcolm-Jamal Warner. See you in the next video.